everybody, Lacey here. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my weekly deck reviews. This week I am going to be reviewing the two decks I have been working with primarily this week. If you're new to this series, just a little refresh. I typically work with one tarot and one oracle deck for each week, and then I review what my experience was like working with those decks at the end of the week, and then I introduce the decks that I will be working with next week. So if you're new here and you like that kind of thing, if you want to see sort of regular reviews of me and how I'm reading with my collection, definitely don't forget to subscribe, like this video if you like this kind of content, and let's get right into it. So the tarot deck that I have been working with this week is the Tarot of Dreams by Ciro Marchetti. This is what the guidebook looks like, and this is the deck. So the backs of the cards look like that. And it's a digital style of artwork that's very vivid and bold and bright. This deck has such a masculine feel to me. I mean, working with it all week, I just feel like it's a very male deck. And that's not a bad thing, and it probably explains why my other Ciro Marchetti deck, Legacy of the Divine, I have often felt called to use when I'm reading for male clients. There's something just about this artwork that I think just gives me the man vibes. I don't know how else to say it. And it's got this very sort of straightforward, not too fluffy approach. I feel like its voice has been clear and a little bit concise, and that's good. I miss the soft expansiveness that I feel with some of my more, I guess, feminine feeling decks. But I did really enjoy working with this deck this week. It was good. I love how clear the symbols are, which was something that I was really drawn to with this deck in the first place. Some of the court cards are not my absolute favorites, and some of the cards feel less emotional. Again, more that masculine feel to me. Less emotional than perhaps I'm used to. But overall, I feel like it's a really easy reader. I think this would be a fantastic beginner deck. I love this depiction of the Hierophant as Faith. It didn't come up for me this week, but I do really love that image. Not my favorite death card. Really do like Strength, though. In any case, I love this card. It was good. It was a solid good. I edged this deck in black, which I think I showed last week when I introduced this deck, because I'd already done that. But yeah, I think that it's bright and it's bold. I think most of my decks now do not have this style of artwork, and I think that's part of what makes it feel different somehow. There was a time when this was the artwork I was most drawn to, and I don't think that it is anymore, but this deck is so beautifully illustrated and so bright and so clear. Yeah, I'm just being repetitive. But it's great, and I would recommend this in a heartbeat to anyone newer to tarot, although I do think that this is now either out of print or going out of print. Don't quote me on that. But I got this feeling like this was going to be no longer available after not too long. I don't know where I got that from, but I'm really glad that I have it. I do enjoy Ciro's decks, and I'm glad that this one is in my collection. And it will be probably the first one that I go to if I want to read around astrology, or if I want to start working with Kabbalah and things like that, because all of the symbols are so clear and easy to see. I really appreciate that. So yeah, I really liked it. I'm glad I have it. The one big thing that kind of surprised me in a really good way is the guidebook is really good. Like, really good. There were some really interesting takes in every card, and it also addresses both the Hebrew letter association and the astrology on every card in the major arcana. And in the minors, I believe, yes, in the minors you still get the astrology with a write-up. It's not just telling you what the associations are, it's explaining how it relates to that card. So this really is an excellent deck if you're working with astrology, and it will be the one I work with when I'm working with Corinne Kenner's Tarot and Astrology book, just so that I have a reference point. But it's more than that. The write-ups here are unique, and they are well written, and they give a unique perspective and a unique voice. It is well worth the read-through of the guidebook just for that. As an example, the Ten of Swords, in the little subtitle where you have the quick synopsis, it says, anguish and pain, but also relief, a hysterical overreaction. And it made me laugh because I actually pulled this card after someone else in my life had pulled this card, and I had said, sometimes I see that card as drama or things feeling bigger than they are. And then I saw that and I was like, hey. And there was just some other really cool bits that came out. I also really appreciate that in the court cards, they have a personality description of the court card. Then they have a stage of development and an approach. So there's different ways to look at the court cards, and this gives you a write-up for each way of looking at them. So again, I will second the previous thing I said, which is that this would be an excellent deck and guidebook for somebody new to tarot. I just think it's really straightforward, gives you a lot of information and a lot of really easy to read and see symbolism that would make this easy to pick up for somebody who is newer and wants something that's not Rider-Waite-Smith exactly, like not an actual Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but something that's Rider-Waite-Smith inspired with its imagery and has really clear, easy to understand, like, meanings. So yes, this would be one that I would definitely recommend. The Oracle deck that I have been working with this week, Peggy made me a bag. It's so pretty. She embroidered a really pretty green pentacle on it for me. Is the Messenger Oracle by Ravynne Phelan. Oops. These are the backings, which is why I had her embroider me. I asked her to embroider me a pentacle. And these are so beautiful. I wish the borders weren't gigantic, but I can get over it. I think it's just jarring because I'm not used to it anymore. I do almost wish on a few of the cards that the keywords were less wordy, which is interesting. Most of them were fine. Sometimes I felt like they hemmed me in just a little bit. They were still fantastic and expansive even when they were phrases, but I almost wished a couple of times for some more room for interpretation, and sometimes the phrases felt just a bit too specific. But I love this artwork. I feel like I could definitely pull this for a number of readings. I did play with the spreads that came in the guidebook, and I enjoyed doing those. I didn't do the big Gaia tree spread here, but I did do the Soul and Shadow spread, and I have incorporated this into my permanent tarot journal to keep because it was basically a 3-card pull where card 1 is your shadow, or what's speaking to you from your shadow. Card 2 is your soul, what's speaking to you from your soul, and then card 3 is merging those two things, so bringing them into balance. And I really enjoyed that spread, and so I'm saving that one for the future. The write-ups in here are not overly long, but they get to the point. I really don't think I needed this. I didn't lean into it at all this week. I just really pulled a card and considered how the phrase and the picture applied to me, and that worked great. Really wonderful for 1-card draws. It was good in a spread too, so I think this one's pretty versatile, and I'm super glad to have it. And I can't wait to put it right beside Dreams of Gaia Tarot by the same artist, Ravynne Phelan. So yay for this one! Big thumbs up from me. So that was really exciting. Coming up this week, here's what I'm going to be working with. So for tarot, I am going to be working with my Fairytale Tarot by Baba Studio. I lucked out last year when this deck's been out of print for some time, so that's the disclaimer. I'm very sorry to say. But I'm on the mailing list for Baba Studio, and they sent him an email and basically said that they had a few decks that were missing a card. I can't remember which card. To be honest, it's been too long. But these decks were short a particular card, and so they did a limited run to print the missing card. They did their best to match it to the existing decks, and they completed a very small supply of these decks and then released them for sale. But they sold out within like a couple of hours, I think, and I just lucked out and saw the email, and this had been one that had been a sought-after deck for me for a long time. The Fairytale Tarot is all based on folk tales, fairy tales, and I had not had a Baba Studio deck before this, and this is different art style than their other ones. It's one that they worked with another illustrator on, so it's not their typical collage style. But I have been really, really enjoying reading through the guidebook. I didn't quite finish it before this deck came up for me to use this week, so I'm going to try to finish the guidebook this week because a lot of the stories are stories I'm not as familiar with. So definitely any cards that I pull, I'll have to, if it's not a story I've already read, I'll have to reread the story in the guidebook. I will say that the guidebook has like a lot in it, and I did purchase this separately when the deck came up. It's only, I say only, it's 232 pages, but the print in here is actually kind of small. So there's a lot in here. Each story is actually fairly lengthy. And so what she does is she being Karen Mahoney, what Karen does is has the story, which is usually about 2 full pages long, or so, for every single card in the tarot, like minors included. And then she has some keywords and then describes how that story relates to that card. So each entry, even in the minors, is like 1, 2, I can't count, about 3 pages long. And in the majors, they were about the same. Yeah, about the same, 2 to 3 pages long. So it just depends. I have already read through more than half of the book. So I've only got about less than 100 pages left to go before I've read the whole thing cover to cover. So I'm going to finish that this week. But I am excited to see how this reads now that I've had some time to sit with it and sit with the stories. Some of the stories are really obvious. Like that's Jack and the Beanstalk for the Ace of Wands. The Page of Cups, that's the story Sadko. I don't know that one yet. 5 of Wands is the story of Kintaro the Golden Boy. I think I've read that one. The Musicians of Bremen for the 4 of Wands. So these are stories from all over the world, and they are not your sugar-coated stories either. The World, Many Fur, I have read this one. This was a really interesting story that had a lot to say. And the neat thing about stories is that they give you so much you can dig into, and you can really pull the meaning, what that particular card has as far as a message for you, out of various places in the story. It may not be the stereotypical meaning. So we will see how I get on with this deck, actually reading with it this week, and go from there. But I'm really excited to play with it and see how it does. The Oracle deck that I'm going to be working with alongside this one. Oh, and look at the pretty unicorn and castle bag. Isn't that pretty? Anyways, the Oracle deck that I'm going to be working with this week is called the Messenger cards. So this is different than, I know these names are so close, but the one I worked with last week was called the Messenger Oracle by Ravynne Phelan. The one I'm working with this week is called the Messenger Cards. This is an independently published deck by Sandra Kunz, and it is all about spirit animal messages, but in a it's not like an animal per card. It's more like different messages per card. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's very much about messages. And the guidebook is written, you'll see several animals are repeated. This is what the backing looks like. Several animals are repeated, and this just feels really special. I don't know how else to describe it. You'll see ravens throughout. I think there's butterflies in a couple different places. I think there's wolves in a couple different places. There's something about this that just really captured my attention, and I was very pleased actually when I saw this in my local shop, because the owner of that shop is really just starting to bring in more of these independently produced decks, and I really want to support that. And please, if you have a local shop in your area, do support them, particularly when they, buy locally or support these indie artists, because I think we're starting to see a shift to these independent decks gaining more attention, and I just like it. Sorry, I'm getting drawn into the artwork because I'm holding these cards up, but they're just beautiful. So we will see how I get on with this. I love that it's square deck, and it feels like pretty decent cardstock. Not thick, but coated in such a way that it feels like it would hold up. It feels like a similar cardstock actually to my soul cards. So lots and lots of give. My soul cards I know have held up so well over the years. So yeah, I feel like this would hold up really, really well. Mostly what caught my attention about this when I saw it on the shelf was the guidebook, because the messages in it are they just speak right to my soul. They're not terribly long, but they have very much a slant of self-worth and confidence and sovereignty and living your highest truth, and it speaks my speak. So at least when I was reading through it, I have already read this cover to cover because it was out on the shelf, and I read the first few pages, and that's actually what convinced me to get this, more so than the cards themselves, which is not usually the case, but this guidebook really spoke to me. So I'm really excited to be working with that this week, and I will let you all know how I get on with it. Particularly, I thought this might go well next to the Fairytale Oracle, because I feel like this is grounded in story, and this is grounded in sort of spirit and spirit messages, and I feel like they might make a really cool combo. So we will see how I get on. That is it for this week's weekly deck reviews. I will let you know how I got on with these two decks next week. And so remember to subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you all again very, very soon. Bye, y'all!